Inside the heavily guarded halls of the Mariinsky Palace in Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky recently sat down for an exclusive one-on-one interview. But the person sitting across the table wasn't a visiting head of state or an experienced diplomat. It was Laura Loomer, a right-wing internet personality and vocal ally of Donald Trump. Loomer built her digital footprint through aggressive public attacks on the man she was now interviewing. She had labeled Zelensky a dictator, accused him of being a jihadi apologist, and hurled deeply personal insults, referring to him as a fake Jew. This stance inverted days before the sit-down. While traveling through Ukraine, Loomer stood before a historic monastery shattered by Russian artillery. Seeing the physical destruction of the war up close led her to a public admission on social media, where she expressed regret for minimizing the struggle of the Ukrainian people over the past 5 years. This interview wasn't a chance encounter in a hallway. The Ukrainian government carefully orchestrated the meeting, deliberately granting a historically hostile podcaster an exclusive block of time where no questions were off-limits and no punches were pulled. It marks a departure from Zelensky's earlier strategy, which relied almost exclusively on highly structured, heavily guarded meetings with traditional politicians at the White House. The pivot reveals a harsh truth about modern statecraft. A wartime president, fighting for the survival of his nation, calculated that bypassing the U.S. State Department and directly engaging an internet provocateur was the most effective way to secure his country's future. The logic behind Zelensky's choice centers on the proximity doctrine, a fundamental shift in how Donald Trump processes political and diplomatic information. World leaders have learned that traditional intelligence briefings and formal policy playbooks carry less weight in Trump's orbit than the opinions of the influencers physically closest to him. This is edgelord diplomacy. By leaning into internet shock value and contrarianism, digital personalities can secure a spot in that coveted inner circle, and then use that proximity to alter the course of foreign policy. This new diplomatic backchannel completely circumvents Congress and the Pentagon. It bypasses institutional expertise entirely, relying instead on meme pages, viral tweets, and podcast streams. Zelensky recognized that the era of traditional diplomatic support is ending. To maintain American support in a potential second Trump administration, he has to directly court the media orbit that shapes the former president's worldview. This meeting in Kyiv exposes a massive ideological civil war currently tearing through the American right. On one side are the isolationists. Figures like J.D. Vance have staked their political identity on actively opposing U.S. aid to Ukraine, pushing a strict, non-interventionist agenda. This group has successfully seeded anti-Ukraine sentiment right into the Oval Office. Voices like Tucker Carlson have frequently mirrored narratives pushed by Russian state television to discourage American involvement. Opposing them are the hawks. Traditional anti-Russia politicians like Marco Rubio are finding unusual alignment with newly converted internet personalities to push back against the isolationist surge. The digital escalation is already underway. Loomer recently attacked the isolationist faction on social media, using complex arguments about race and religion to counter their propaganda and defend the Ukrainian cause. Loomer's trip to Kyiv functioned as a calculated power grab within the right-wing ecosystem. By securing an audience with Zelensky, she established her own geopolitical influence and signaled a clear break from the isolationist wing of the party. Digital propaganda can obscure reality for years, but first-hand, physical exposure to a war zone still possesses the raw power to break that spell. The fallout over Ukraine marks the opening battle for the 2028 Republican presidential platform. The America First movement is fracturing into two incompatible paths: total isolationism versus hawkish interventionism. Ukraine is the ultimate litmus test. The winner of this faction war will select the next generation of party leadership, dictating U.S. global strategy for the next decade. For a world leader to swallow his pride and sit with his harshest critic proves a dark reality. The survival of sovereign nations now relies on mastering the volatile, unregulated terrain of internet influencer politics.